Perhaps the most difficult thing about being a parent, and the thing that you made most difficult for your parents, is trying to get our kids to see the world the way that we see the world. And this was your parents' biggest struggle as well. They sat around thinking, how in the world do we get him? How in the world do we get her? As parents, we sit around thinking, how in the world can I get him? How in the world can I get her to understand how important math is? How do I get them to see math the way I see math? How do I get them to see sugar the way I see sugar? How do I get them to see friends the way I see friends? It's a constant struggle. The second biggest challenge for a parent is trying to get spouses to see the world the way that we see it, right? How do I get them to see money the way I see money? How do I get them to see sex the way I see sex? How do I get them to see money the way I see money? It's just, and anyway, let's go back to parenting. So as parents, or when your parents were parenting you, this is what they thought. Someday you'll understand. Someday you'll understand. Right now, this doesn't make any sense to you, why you're having to learn geometry, why you're having to learn algebra 2. But one day this will make sense to you. And if you could see math, if you could see sugar, if you could see friends, if you could see your time the way that I see it as an adult, you would do as I say. If you could see as I see, you would actually do as I say. So the question that we've been asking in this series is, what if our Heavenly Father felt toward us the way we feel toward our kids, or the way that your parents felt toward you when they were trying to open your eyes and get you to see the world the way that they see the world? And apparently we believe our Heavenly Father is exactly that way, is constantly trying to help us renew our minds to the way the world is. And so we've been talking about this big idea that when we see as God sees, when we begin to see as God sees, we will begin to do, or we will be more inclined to do what God says. When we see as God sees, we are going to be more inclined to do as he says. And as I've mentioned a couple times, this is a prayer that I have been praying for years and years and years and years and years. That it is just a habit for me to say, God, help me to see the way you see. Help me to see my family the way you see my family. My relationships the way you see relationships. Help me to see money the way that you see money. Help me to see my potential, my job, our churches, everything we do. God, if I could just catch a glimpse of the way that you see the world, I am sure I would respond appropriately. So this is a powerful, powerful idea, and it's central to those of us who believe in God, and it's certainly central to those of us who believe that Jesus is our Savior. Perhaps seeing is sort of the idea behind this. Perhaps seeing is not only believing, but perhaps seeing that becomes believing actually leads to a different kind of behavior. How do God help me to see the world the way that you see the world? So today we're going to take a slice of the world, and I want us to talk specifically about our time, because essentially your time is your life. If you ask the question, God, help me to see my life the way that you see my life, you're essentially in many ways talking about your time, because your time is your life. Your time, you haven't thought about it this way perhaps, is your most valuable asset. It's your most valuable commodity. It's the most valuable thing you have is your time. In fact, it's so valuable, we talk about time like it's money. Think about the words that we use that we associate with time that we would normally associate with money. We talk about spending time, we talk about investing time, we talk about wasting time as if it's really an asset. And here's an interesting and sad thought as well. At the end of your life, and at the end of my life, and because we've been through this, some of us understand this, at the end of our lives, many of us are going to spend a lot of money trying to buy more time. And if you've ever had a loved one who eventually passed away, and you were there toward the end and you were in the hospital and you saw those hospital bills, you went, wow, I just spent a lifetime of money trying to buy someone I loved more time. And of course we would do that. Why? Because that's how valuable time is to us. Or let's flip it around this way. What if I came to you and I said, I want to buy some of your time? What if there was some new technology and I could buy 5 years off of your life and add it to my life? How much would you sell me your time for? How much is 6 months worth? Hey, I want to buy the last 6 months of your life and add it to mine. You pass away 6 months earlier, a year earlier. Imagine if you had to make that decision. It would be challenging, wouldn't it? Because how do you put a value on time? It is more valuable to us than anything else. So the question I want to ask today and answer today is, how does God see our time? God, help us to see as you see, so we'll do as you say. God, help us to see as you see so that we live lives that are in sync with the way that you made the world to be and you made the world to operate. And to help us answer that question, I want to introduce you or reintroduce you to someone we are all familiar with, Moses. Moses, because Moses wrote a psalm that ended up in the book of Psalms that helps us understand how time works and how God views time. But before we get into that, I want to say one thing about Moses. And if you're not a Christian or not a religious person, this is super important. In fact, this might be the most important part of the message. The reason that Christians take Moses seriously is not because Moses is in the Bible. The reason Christians take Moses seriously is because Jesus talked about Moses. The reason we believe Moses was a historical character and that he did some of the things that the Old Testament claims that he did is because Jesus refers to those things. And as Christians, we just go with whatever Jesus said. In fact, Jesus actually quoted Moses to substantiate some of the things that Jesus taught. So when you hear us talk about Moses, it's not because Moses is in the Bible, it's because Jesus believed Moses lived, and we just say, if Jesus believed it, that settles it for us. Again, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, because anybody who can predict their own death and resurrection and pull it off, we just go with whatever they say. Okay, we're very simple people. Now, Moses, this is why Moses is a great example for us. Moses lived to be 120 years old. And Moses started out his life as a rich, spoiled brat living and growing up in the household of Pharaoh. Moses grew up in opulence. Moses grew up in wealth. Moses grew up in a world where he could have anything he wanted because he was adopted into Pharaoh's daughter's family, and he was raised like a son or a grandson of the most powerful man in the world. And somewhere along the way, probably, as a young man, Moses got a fatal case of purpose. Moses looked at the Hebrew people who were enslaved and they were suffering, and it bothered him. And he thought to himself, something needs to be done. And he lived with this incredible tension that we can't even begin to imagine. Do I stay in my life of ease and comfort? Do I continue to live in this opulence? Do I continue to embrace pleasure? Or do I step out of all of that into the unknown and embrace a purpose that has no guaranteed ending? Moses did not know the end of Moses' story. Moses did not know how this would turn out, but Moses, as a grown-up, decided, I'm going to leave the comforts of Egypt and of the palace, and I'm going to step into a problem that needs to be solved, and he embraced purpose, and that is the reason we know the name Moses. I would guess, if I were to ask you to write down all the people that you know of that lived 12, 13, 1400 BC, Moses may be the only name that you came up with. That's how significant what he did was. But the only reason it happened is because at some point along the way, he latched onto the idea of purpose. He chose purpose over pleasure. So Moses lives to be 120 years old, does extraordinary things, grew up with everything, walked away from everything. And now in this psalm, he gives us his perspective on life, and specifically his perspective on time. One last thing before we look at the text. Look up here. Anytime you meet someone, anytime you read about someone who walked away from everything in order to do something, pay attention. Anytime you hear from someone, read about someone, or hear of someone who walked away from a lot in order to do something of significance, pay attention to that person. That is someone who understands time, the connection between time and life, and the connection between time and life and purpose. Now, Moses wrote so long ago, the way that he writes is a little bit confusing. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you the bottom line for what Moses is gonna teach us, and then we're gonna look at the text together and see if we can dig it out. But here's Moses' take on time. Here's what he's gonna tell us. Context is everything. Context is everything. More specifically, there is no purpose, he's gonna tell us. There is no purpose apart from context. There is no purpose apart from context. To see time correctly, to see your time correctly, to see your life correctly, to see your time as God sees your time, you have to see your time or your life in its proper context. Let me illustrate it this way. Have you ever opened a drawer at home and pulled something out and said to your roommate or said to somebody else in your home, what is this? And you pulled something out and you had no idea what it was. And they looked at you and they said, oh, and suddenly this thing that had no purpose gained purpose because they told you what it was. In fact, I brought an illustration. Does anybody have a drawer or a box at home that looks anything like this? Right? You got something that looks like this? And you reach in there and you ask, what is this? What is this? Now, when you pull one of these out of a drawer and you hold it up to your roommate or your husband or your wife or your kids, or you bring all this stuff out of your kid's closet and you say, what is this? This is important. This is a purpose question. Here's what you're asking. Why does this exist? What does this do? Why is this here? And the answer to all those questions is a context answer. This is so important. The answer to what is this, why is this here, what does this do, what does this go with, it's all a context question. Because somebody will look at you and say, oh, that's the cord to, and suddenly this worthless cord takes on purpose because it connects to something else. Oh, that's the adapter for, oh, that goes with, and suddenly these worthless wires take on purpose because we know what, don't miss this, we know what they are connected to. We don't know what they are for until we know what they are connected to. We do not know what they are for. We do not know why they are here. We do not know why they are hanging around in our house until we know what they connect to. This is so important. This is why some of you have thrown things away, right? Ladies, you have thrown things away that seem to have no value and no purpose, only to discover I was saving that screw because it's the only screw on the planet that fits the fill in the blank, and I've been looking all over for that screw, and you threw it away. Now we're going to have to trash the whole enterprise because that was the key to the whole thing, and you threw it away, the screw. And ladies, or who I'm picking on ladies, you looked at the screw and you thought, I don't know what this is. I don't know what the purpose is. This is valueless. I'll throw it away. Meanwhile, your husband or your boyfriend or whoever is like, oh my gosh, that was the key to life. That was the secret to life. And you threw it away. But it had no value. Don't miss this, because you did not know what it was connected to. You did not know what it was for. Men, we've done the same thing with our wives. We've done the same things with the women in our life. What is this? This can't have any purpose. Why do you have it? Why do you have 20 of them? Why are there so many? Now, here's what Moses says about this. And this comes from the oldest psalm in all of the Jewish scriptures. Okay, it's found in the book of Psalms, but it's the oldest psalm in all the Jewish scriptures because he wrote this about, amazing, 1200 to 1300 BC. 1200 to 1300 BC. So here's Moses, stepped into purpose, out of opulence. He says, hey, if you want to understand your life, if you want to understand time, you got to have context, because context is what gives us purpose. You don't want to be an adapter that doesn't have anything to adapt to. Context creates purpose. So here's how he says it. Here's his words, Psalm 90. He says this, Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. God, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. This is like his purpose statement, that God, we live within the context of you. You are our context. Wherever we dwell, wherever we show up on the timeline, whatever year we're born and whatever year we die, we dwell in you. Before the mountains, now this is an amazing, amazing statement. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Now, I just got to pause a minute and tell you how extraordinary this is. This is the most progressive view of God imaginable, and to think that he wrote this 1300 BC. Because in 1200 and 1300 BC, every culture believed in multiple gods, every culture worshiped multiple gods, and Moses says, no. God is an immaterial, uncreated creator. God is an immaterial, we do not have idols, we do not have representations of our God. Our God is an immaterial, uncreated creator. I'm telling you, it would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before any other civilization caught up with this notion of God. For the next hundreds and hundreds, for centuries, every culture worshiped idols, multiple idols. But before all of that, Moses says, no, there is one God who is immaterial. He is everlasting to everlasting. He is the context for all of creation. He is the context for everything we experience and everything that happens. In fact, what's so interesting about this is Moses was raised in Egypt. Now, the Egyptians worshiped the what? Anybody know? Yellow sky. Thank you. He worshiped the sun, right? I know you don't want to say it wrong out loud, right? The Egyptians worshiped the sun. Now, I bet you know the answer to this. And the sun god was named, anybody know? Ra. That's right. His first name was who? That's right. It was Ra. Did you get that? Okay, now. Anyway, so the sun god, now here's what's fabulous, okay? Think of this. Moses is raised in Egypt. I mean, he's raised to worship Ra. He's raised to worship the sun. And the interesting thing about the god Ra is there were two theories about where Ra came from. One was that he was self-created. Now, that is a great trick because that meant he had to show up right before he became. Okay, think about that. The other theory about Ra was that another God created Ra. So the fact that 1300 BC, Moses recognizes, no, the Egyptians have it wrong. Everybody has it wrong. There is one God. He's immaterial, everlasting to everlasting, the eternal God. Now, here's his point in all this. And we got to keep going. Here's his point. God's eternal existence is the context for our little itty bitty lives. God's eternal existence, everlasting to everlasting, no bookends. God's eternal existence is the context for our lives. Whenever you're born, wherever we are born within the context of the God who got here before us and will be here after we're gone. Then he keeps going. He gets a little bit more practical. You turn people back to dust, saying, return to dust, you mortals. This is the most Gandalf-like thing in all of the Bible right here, okay? Return to dust, you mortals. And then he says this, 1,000 years in your sight is like a day that has just gone by. Or he says, no, it's not even like a day. It's shorter than that. It's like a watch. And a watch was a period of 3 hours. He says, you know what, God, from your perspective, 1,000 of our years, it's like 3 hours to you. 1,000 of our years is like, it's like 3 hours to you. Our lifetimes, our entire lifetimes are like little blips. I mean, they're like a third of a blip. It's just like, not even, you can't even hear the blip. It's so small. He says, our lives are just so small. Then he says this, yet you sweep people away in the sleep of death. They are like the new grass of the morning. Moses, could you elaborate on the whole new grass thing? Yes, I will. He says this, in the morning, the new grass, springs up new. But by evening, the new grass, is dry and withered. His point is, as if you needed to be reminded of this, that life is short. We show up late and we leave early. And if you stay there and if you focus on that idea at some point, and this is his point, if you focus on that long enough, eventually you have to ask the question that Moses is begging us to ask. And the question is, well, then what's the point? What's the purpose? I mean, if you're here today and you're gone tomorrow, I mean, if every time you turn around, another 10 years has gone by, another 10 years, you finally got that first job, next thing you know, you've been at that same job you never liked to begin with for 10, 15 years. And then you blink and another 10 years ago, he wants us to ask, so then what's the point? If life is like that, if we're like the grass here today and gone tomorrow, what is the point? Now, here's the good news. When you ask what is the point or what is the purpose, that is a purpose question. And remember, there is no purpose without context. It's as if, and this is so important, it's as if we walked over to a kitchen drawer and we pulled ourselves out and said, what's this short life? What's this short life? What is this short life? What's this short life for? Or how about this? What am I for? What's this short life? What's this short life for? What am I for? And the answer to that question for each of you and for every one of you and for me, the answer to the question of purpose is the word context. Going back to our chord illustration, your life goes with, your life is part of, your life connects to something other than you. Purpose requires connection. Purpose, this is what Moses is teaching us. Purpose requires connection. And if you get disconnected from the everlasting to everlasting, you are like a phone cord without a phone. You're like an adapter with nothing to adapt to. And you are gonna end up asking, like we all ask at some point, because it's a good question, why am I here? Now, and as Moses goes on, I'm gonna skip the next few verses because I wanna get to the end. For the next few verses, it's even more depressing. Here's the summary of the next few verses. He says, you know what? If you're not careful, you'll just spend the next bunch of years wandering around, making a bunch of mistakes, paying for it, and then you die. If you are not careful, if you don't pay attention, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, if you do not find the proper context for life, your life is just gonna go by and then it's going to end. And picking up on that same theme, he says this. He says, our days may come to 70 years or 80 if our strength endures. Yet the best of them, encourage us, Moses, yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away. This is his description of a life without purpose. This is his description of a life wasted. This is his description of a life where they never figured out the context. What is this life? What is this life for? What am I for? And then in Psalm 90, Moses turns a corner. Just as we're about to give up in despair, he says, if we only knew. If we only knew. Implication, there's something you don't know. Implication, there's something that's not intuitive. Implication, there's something if you don't pay attention, you'll miss it. If we only knew. If we only knew, and then this isn't helpful, if we only knew the power of your anger. Did we change the subject? Where are we going? If we only knew the power of your anger, and then it gets even worse. Your wrath is as great as the fear that is your due. Now, doesn't that sort of address the whole purpose issue right there? I mean, maybe this could be a life verse. You could put it up on your mirror just to be encouraged every day. So without putting you to sleep with a Hebrew grammar lesson, let me put into different English words the point that he is making, because this is his point, and this is so extremely powerful. Here's what Moses is telling us. He's saying, if we knew, remember he says, if we only knew, if we knew, or if we could see God as he is, we would give him the reverence he is due. If we could see God the way that God is, we would give God the reverence he is due. If we could catch a glimpse of the true context of our lives, the everlasting to everlasting God, Moses is saying, let me just tell you, if you catch a glimpse of that, you will lean in and you will align your life with the purposes of God, because you would give him automatically the reverence, the respect he is due. But here's the challenge. God's glory is hidden, so we aren't smitten. Doesn't exactly rhyme, but you get the point. God's glory is somewhat hidden, so we aren't smitten. Now, Moses knew all about this. If you know the story of Moses, Moses got into the presence of God and he came back glowing. People were afraid of him. Now, let me illustrate it this way. Have you ever met a really, really, really famous person? I mean, somebody so famous that you could not speak. Somebody that was so famous that you knew, if I speak, I will say something stupid, so I'm not gonna say anything. And then you said something anyway, and sure enough, you walked away going, okay, that was stupid. What? Because you were kind of shaky. You just couldn't get it out. You know, have you ever met somebody that they just made you so nervous? And if you have, here's something that you didn't think about. That person could have said to you, as you were like, it's so nice to meet you, and we watch your show, oh, my voice, and and then you start talking, and your brain's going, I'm talking. I can't stop talking. I should be asking questions, but I'm telling this person all about my life, and they do not care. But I can't stop, right? You ever had that situation? If that person had said to you, hey, would you please give me your shoes? You would have given them your shoes and walked away barefooted going, I just gave whoever my shoes. This is the power of, famous people. Years ago, Sandra and I were in a hotel lobby in Washington, D.C., and we were standing there talking, waiting for somebody. And all of a sudden, I saw a look on her face I've never seen. We had been married about 25 years. We'd been married about 25 years at that point. I saw a look on her face. She's facing me I have never seen before. She grabbed my arm, and I literally thought, I'm not exaggerating. I thought we were about to have a medical emergency, I promise. The look on her face, she grabbed my arm, she got stiff, and she was trying to talk, and she couldn't talk. And I promise you, I was holding onto her arm, looking around the lobby like, who do I call? What do I do? My wife is having a stroke or something is going on. I just tensed up. And then finally, she began pointing over my shoulder and saying, look. And I turned around, and sitting outside the restaurant connected to the hotel lobby was a person, an actor who is so famous, every single one of you would know who it is, and stars in one of the longest running and most successful and financially lucrative TV series that has ever been, that continues to play today. And I'm not gonna tell you who it is, okay? So, and I can't. I would be busy all week. All right, so she's looking at this person, and I turn around and I see him, and he's talking to a couple of people waiting to go into this restaurant. And I said to her, let's go meet him. She's like, no, we can't. And she's like, no, and we're tugging her. I'm like, let's just go say hi. And she's like, no, we can't. Now, there is somebody in the world that would have that same effect on you. There is somebody that would have this. Here's my point. If that's the way we are, or if that's the way we have the potential to be around a famous person, imagine what we would do if God showed up in all of his glory. This is why when people say, oh, God appeared to me, I'm like, no, he didn't. Your face is not melted off your skull. God did not appear to you, okay? Well, God appeared to me in a dream and he said, sweetheart, I'm like, no, I don't know who that was, and I believe you, but that wasn't God, okay? When God shows up, we're all face down and we can't even make a decision. The answer is yes, sir, because the glory of God is overpowering. Now, here's what Moses is saying. This is a big deal. Moses is saying, look, God's face is hidden. God has to pull back on his glory lest we all be smitten. But if you were to focus, and if you were to invite his presence into your life, and if you were to catch a glimpse of the glory of God, it would change everything, because the context for our little lives is God's everlasting purpose connected to his everlasting agenda that's connected to his everlasting glory. That to find purpose in life is to connect in a significant way, creature, creator. And when the creature and the creator are connected in a significant way, that's where we find purpose. And that's why he says, this is so great, if only we knew, if only we could see, it would change everything. We would find the context for our time. We would find the context for our little itty bitty blip of a life. Here's another idea. God created us on purpose. This is his point, for his purpose. God created us on purpose for his purpose. God created you on purpose for his purpose. And apart from his purpose, don't miss this, apart from his purpose, apart from him, you are an 8-track tape. There is nothing to play you in. Apart from him, you are a 1G bag phone. Anybody remember the bag phone? If you've got one, it's useless. There's no more 1G. And here's what Moses is saying. If you disconnect, or if you fool yourself into thinking that somehow you can find purpose in this meaningless life, in this little bitty, itty bitty short life, Moses is saying, look, I lived 120 years, been there, done that, I've had it all, I've had nothing, and I'm telling you, if you could only see the glory, just a little bit of the glory of God, you would lean in and it would change everything for you. We need to learn something. We need to remember something. That's why he says this, if only we knew the power of your anger. Now, so Moses has turned the corner. He's gonna land the plane. He's gonna give us something practical. So Moses says, in light of all of that, in light of the fact that context is where you find purpose, there's no purpose apart from context, in light of the fact that God is everlasting to everlasting, in light of the fact that we dwell between everlasting and everlasting, and in light of the fact that there really is no purpose for God's creations apart from the Creator, he says, in light of all that, God, teach us. We need to learn something, because if we don't learn it, we're gonna miss it. Teach us to number our days. Teach us to number our days, which really means teach us to remember that our days are numbered. Because if you forget that your days are numbered, you will live a disconnected life. And if you forget that your days are numbered, you will try to mine and pump purpose out of this life. He says, teach us to remind us that our days are numbered. Teach us to number our days that, and here's the result, that we may gain a heart, I love this word, of wisdom. Do you know what wisdom is? Wisdom is viewing any topic or any subject within its broadest context. That's what wisdom is. When you meet somebody who's wise and you ask them a question, they come up with these wise answers, you're talking to somebody who is able to pull out of the specifics, pull back from the emotion, and look at whatever it is you're talking about within the broadest context. That's what wisdom is. And Moses says this, you need to begin to ask God to teach you to number your days, to remind you that your time is limited, your time is short. And if you begin to number your days, you will gain the wisdom that you need. You will have a greater understanding of the context of your life, which is God and his purposes in this world. Which means the question that we should ask, and the question that should haunt us, and the questions that should inhabit our prayers isn't, what am I here for? The question is, who am I here for? Because the great news is this, you are not here for a what? A what is too small a thing for you to live for. You are not designed for a what. You are not created for a what. You have not been created in the image of a what. You have been created for a who. Who am I here for? And here's what Moses would say. He would say, as long as you answer that question, me, I'm here for me. He says, then here's your future. Your days may be 70 or 80 years if your strength endures, yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, and they quickly pass, and you will fly away. But if you embrace the truth that you were created for God's purposes, that you were created with a purpose for his purposes, if you are willing to say, I was created on purpose for God's purposes, Moses says, then you are on to something. You have connected. You have found the context for life. You have found the context for your time. You are on to the greatest adventure. He would say to us, folks, this is why I left the comforts of the palace of Egypt, because I knew God's activity was with the Hebrew slaves, and I did not want to miss out on what God was up to in the world. Now, when I was a student pastor, which means I taught high school kids a lot, I would try to talk about these heavy, weighty things. And I understood. I remember high school. And you know, juniors and seniors in high school, sometimes college freshmen would just kind of stare at me like, okay, hey, Andy, can you come back in about 20 years and tell me this? Because I'm 20. Okay, 70 and 80 years, that's a long time. Okay, Andy, I think you're right. I believe you. I can't argue with you. It means Moses. You know, I can't argue with Moses. But all I'm saying is, I'm a little bit too young for this. So if you come back 20 or 30 years when I'm like an old person, I don't really have any good options anyway, and talk to me about purpose, I think I'd be all about it, because this doesn't sound like very much fun. To which Moses, I think, would say, it's better than fun. It's rewarding. It's better than pleasure. It's rewarding. It's better than the temporary emotion that comes with having a good time. It's rewarding because you are tapping into the purpose that God has for you, and there is no better place to be, and there is no better life to live than the life of purpose, connected to the everlasting God. But context is everything, and there is no purpose. There is no purpose. There is no purpose apart from context. And when we see this, and we catch a glimpse of this, do you know what we'll do? We will live as if our days are numbered. And we will lean into what God is up to in the world. We will live, no matter how old we are, we will live as if our days are numbered. And we will lean into what God is up to in the world. We will find ourselves saying, where is God at work? I want to be a part of that. Where is God active? I want to be a part of that. God, how do I lean into your purposes at home with my kids? How do I prioritize these kids that are here today and gone tomorrow and grown up? God, how do I lean into your purposes as a father? How do I lean into your purposes as a mom? How do I lean into your purposes at school, in my fraternity, my sorority, at work, at whatever capacity I do things, wherever I go? God, help me to discover what you are up to wherever I go, and I want to be a part of that. And Moses would say, bingo. You have found the context for life. Your life has purpose. Your time has become meaningful. Now, the reason I'm so passionate about this is simply this, and I'll close. I don't want you to miss this. And the older I get, the faster time goes. And I look back and I feel, I'm telling you, I consider myself so blessed and so fortunate because I grew up in a home that since day one, my father said, before I can even remember, he would say, Andy, you need to pray every day. God, show me your plan for my life. Show me your plan for my life. Show me your plan for my life, which said to me, I'm here for a purpose, but I'm here for God's purposes. I've prayed that my whole life. I'm telling you, this was such a significant thing to me. And I may have shared this with you before. This was such a big deal to me. When I was 16 years old, right before my 17th birthday, I started doing a journal, like some of you do journals. My first journal entry, no lie, my first journal entry is this. If I ever have a son, I am going to tell him God has a purpose for his life. This has made a significant difference for me. My first journal entry. So I don't say this to you to say, hey, it's a pretty good thing. It's a pretty cool thing. Hey, I needed something to preach on. This seemed like a good topic. No. This is a life message. And having been one of those fortunate, blessed, unique people who grew up on the positive side of this, I don't want you to miss it. Because one day you'll be 30, and then you're 40, and you're 50, and you're 60, and you're 70. In fact, there are people sitting here today or watching today, and you're thinking, I wish I'd heard this 20 years ago. Because I just kind of bumbled around and rumbled around and tried to find meaning and purpose out of life for me. And Andy, you're exactly right. Moses, you're exactly right. You don't find purpose without a context. And there is no context other than the context God created you for. You do not want to miss it. You do not want to settle for less. And Moses would say, and you don't want to miss a day. One last thing, then I'm done. Today, at all of our churches around the city and our churches around the country, and many of you who are watching online, you get this. The reason we have been able to do what we've done in this city, in all these cities, is because of thousands and thousands of teenagers and college students and adults who get this. And for those of you who've carved out a little bit of your extra time and a little bit of your extra money to invest in what God is doing through our local churches, I cannot say thank you enough. But I know what you think when I thank you. Because every single time for 20 years, I've walked up to somebody who's serving or preparing for a mission trip or raising money to do something or giving money to something or standing outside of a door or sitting on this floor with children. For years and years and years, I walk up to people who are doing this and living this way. And I always say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And 100% of the time, do you know what they say? Do you know what you say? You say, no, thank you. Why? Because you don't need to thank me. This is purpose. This is meaning. This is life. I wouldn't give this up. Why would I not invest in what God is up to simply so I could sleep in late or have some more extra time or play another round of golf or just hang out with friends again? You don't have to thank me. I get it. I have found the context for my life. I understand that God created me with a purpose, and they are His purposes. I'm connected. And for those of you who can say, that's me, I just want to say, even though you don't want to hear it, thank you. What an honor and a joy to serve alongside of you. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for preserving this ancient text. This is amazing. It's mind-boggling. 1200, 1300 BC, and we're reading it? Thank you. Only you could do that. And to think that most of us have multiple copies at home. That's amazing. Thank you. But more than that, would you open our eyes to what we just heard? Would you instill in us a hunger for you, a hunger to discover what it means to go to work and to go to school and to do friends and to do relationships within the context of everlasting to everlasting, and that we would find purpose and that we would live purposeful lives because we are connected to the God of all creation. So give us eyes to see and give us ears to hear and give us wisdom to know what to do with what we just heard. In Jesus' name, amen.